Calling the Chico Unified School Board meeting to order, and we will start with the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, so announcements. Does anyone have an announcement? All right, so I will just remind individuals that the League of Women Voters of Butte County is a totally nonpartisan organization, and they did all the candidate forums, and they have the records of those available on YouTube. You can also go to the website vote.org and see the information that each individual candidate has put up. So the League of Women Voters is also going to run the Durham election site, and I am going to work the BMU election site. So we'll have plenty of places to vote. Okay, with that, we'll move ahead to the consent calendar. Does anyone want to pull an item or discuss something? Okay, so seeing none, may I have a motion?
I'll move the consent calendar.
I have a motion by Tom Lando
I'll second.
and a second by Eileen Robinson. All right, so all those in favor of the consent calendar signify by your vote by name.
Robinson, aye.
Lando, aye.
Kaiser, aye.
Tennis, aye.
All right, 4-0. We do have board member Caitlin Dalby on Zoom, but she got ill, but she got ill so suddenly that we were unable to announce it according with the Brown Act. So she's listening, can participate, she can't vote. So that's why all of our votes will be 4 as a total tonight. So, okay, 4-0.
Thank you, Catherine.
Pardon? Oh,
I
yes.
said thank you.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate not having somebody sick come and share their germs. All right. So with that, we move to the informational item, Safe Schools presentation. That's Jim Hanlon and John Shepard.
Okay, thank you for having us tonight. This is an informational item regarding safe schools. We're going to give you an overview of what's happening in the district. I wanted to thank board members Robinson, Dalby, and Tennis, whom have met with us on over a couple occasions to go over this and fine-tune it so that we're bringing forward to you the items and the issues that are of importance to the board tonight. So, with that, I'm going to kind of start with an overview of we have what's called a DIRT team, a District Incident Response Team that oversees safety in the school district and coordinates training, practice, information, all of those things. And it's made up of a fairly large team, as you can see, from all the different departments in the district, plus Chico Police Department. Who coordinates closely with us through their SRO officers. So, for example, IT services would be important in communications and those types of things, and we'll get into specifics like regarding that later in the presentation. As you just approved in the consent agenda, each school site has a safe school plan. It's a template that is very specifically given to us by the state, and it covers many different issues. The next slide will show you there, but it's due by October 15th of each year. And that's a hard deadline. If we don't meet that, the superintendent doesn't get paid. So, I mean, it's one of the only thing in Ed Code where there is that kind of a condition placed on getting the safe school plans submitted to the school board and adopted by October 15th. So we're very particular in getting those to you. Yes, Ms. Robinson.
Thank you. For anyone that hasn't, laid up at night wishing they had something to do and decided to go delve into those school site safety plans, they are really very useful, very in-depth, very precise in what they do for each school site. So my compliments to the people that, that work on getting those done by this time every year, because they're well done.
Thank you. Yes, our principals work on those starting on the first week of school, which can be pretty chaotic. They are rather lengthy, and they have to make sure that all of the things that are happening on their campus with regards to safe schools are reflected in the report. They have to update any staffing changes, any kinds of architectural changes from the previous year, and we've had a lot of facility changes on our campuses in the last 5 years. So there are a lot of things that they have to be very sure that they're getting in there, and then they have to work that through their school site council and get input and get approval. So that's why all the signatures are on there. So yeah, it takes quite a few meetings and a lot of work by our site administration. Next one. Okay, we're going to welcome Mr. Carver up here. He's going to go over the safe learning environments in the classroom.
Would you like me to lower that for you?
So I don't play basketball. Good evening, board. How are you? So as you can see on the slide, the mission of our department, as it states, is to provide quality services supporting and maintaining a safe learning environment. And you can read all that, but what we have all these things in place that M&O does, not only from our custodial staff to our trade staff. They're always out there looking for the safety and security of not only our staff, but our students.
Or bring it down a little more. There you go.
So did you hear any of that?
Now we do.
So our staff, from our custodial staff all the way to our tradespeople, anytime they're at a site, they're always looking for safety and security issues within that site that they can bring to our attention and then mitigate them so that there's no issues. Any questions?
That was it? Oh, wow.
Good evening. So this slide we included in the presentation just to talk briefly about school construction. So how do we know that the facilities that we're building are safe for our population, our students, and our staff? So the architects and the designers, all of the engineers, are required to follow the California Building Code. And that code has requirements for outside air, air circulation, materials, structural safety. So it is very big code, and it is our guiding principles of how we design and build school construction. Also, I wanted to mention that the board adopted in 2008 the goals for collaborative for high-performing schools, which includes healthy learning environments, outside daylighting, outside air filtration coming into the classrooms at a certain percentage, building materials, clean building materials, no VOCs, no formaldehyde and hydrofluorocarbons. I'm going to say that 3 times fast. It also controls paint and coatings to make sure that they're low VOCs and asbestos-free materials. Next slide, please. Just wanted to review with the board the things that, the projects that have been implemented at the district since Measure E passed and we developed our facilities master plan. So we have installed fencing district-wide. When we started working on the fencing of the perimeter of our schools, really only the play fields in the back of our elementary schools and our sport fields at our high schools were fenced. Other than Pleasant Valley High School, they did get a jump start on fencing their perimeter before we got started. So that has come a long way over the years to creating a safer environment at our schools. We improved exterior lighting, so at nighttime, staff and police officers can see better around the perimeter of our schools. We installed a lot of security cameras. We also installed some speed bumps and crosswalks at locations that were noted as, difficult pedestrian, bicycle, vehicle points of contact. Performed Americans with Disabilities Act improvements at every site, from the front sidewalk to the main office and the parking lots. Installed access control systems at our newly renovated and modernized campuses. Lock blocks for Code Red. Lock blocks, I have a picture of them that we'll discuss later. Some safety mirrors, giving staff the ability to observe students in areas that are, they can't easily see around corners, that sort of thing. Kind of like forklift mirrors that you see out in warehouses. The pedestrian flashing beacons at Marsh Junior High School and at Chico High School on the Esplanade. Beam repairs that were required in aging buildings, dry rot repairs, and the addition of heating and air conditioning systems to our gymnasiums. So now all of our gymnasiums have systems. Thank you.
May I? Before you go, first of all, I want to say thank you to both you and maintenance, because I know that the facility stuff isn't the really exciting security stuff to talk about with, flashing lights and slamming doors, but this is the majority of what prevents injuries and crime. I really appreciate that. Secondly, could you tell us a little bit about the access control system? I've heard a couple of different things, and I want to make sure I understand how those work.
Sure.
Thank you.
So the access control that I'm mentioning in this bullet point is basically the removal of a keyed system on campus. So everyone will have access with a card. Maybe their identification card will open their classroom, their teacher staff room, and the restrooms.
Everyone meaning staff in this point, in this case?
Yes,
We're not
everyone in the staff.
giving kindergartners swipe keys?
Correct.
Okay, just making sure.
Correct. And the system is very complicated, and it has a lot of value and a lot of things that it can do. We're just getting our feet wet with what it can do. But we do have the ability to track, if this was your card, what doors you opened at any given time. If a room is open that shouldn't be opened, we can go back and say who opened it and didn't lock it back up. We can track that. It also has the ability to lock and unlock the school on a schedule. So in the morning, before the office manager and the principal arrives, right then the doors get unlocked, and then in the evening after the custodians are leaving, then it goes into total lockdown on a schedule.
So if a teacher needed to run back to their classroom after hours, they would no longer be able to do that?
With their key, they would be able to do it, but it would all doors on campus would have been automatically locked at a certain time on the schedule.
But the teacher could get into the front door and into their classroom?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
So it is an evolving system. We have it at Shasta, Neal Dow, Marigold, Loma Vista, and we also have a similar system at the high school gymnasiums. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, yeah, for the most part it
Okay.
does.
Any more before we move on?
I just would like you to discuss the interaction that's going on right now between the city and ourselves with the planning of the traffic
Traffic safety.
amendments. Yeah, we had a tragic incident in the city that happened today, and so,
Sure. Our department meets with the City of Chico Public Works Department 4 times a year, and we have done so for many years. And the overall goal is to collaborate and work together on traffic safety issues that are that are ongoing that need to be addressed. Maybe there isn't funding that the city has to do the project, or maybe there isn't funding that the district has to do the project, but if we put our minds together, we can come up with good solutions. So recently, the city brought in a outside traffic engineer to come and assess several schools for us, Pleasant Valley High, Bidwell, Shasta, and Chico High. And they provided a report that really gives some suggestions for what to do with the hazards that we have. And so we'll be talking about those when we're working on our master plan, implementing some of those suggestions into our master planning document so that we can get them accomplished.
So 3 sets of eyes of experts.
Yes. Yes.
You have not yet talked about this slide yet, have you?
Okay.
Right?
So this is just a photographic example of what we've done for fencing. The signage was also a big effort, letting visitors know that they need to go to the front office and check in. You can't just walk onto campus and roam around, so telling visitors where they need to go, and then the camera system. So it's just photograph examples.
So back on the subject of fencing, before we move on to the next thing. And this alludes to something that was in an email that I sent to all of you guys today. But the single point access, we probably all agree that there should be multiple exits, right?
Absolutely. When we put in fencing, perimeter fencing, the gates all have panic hardware
Say
on
again?
them. Panic hardware. So the big bar that you push in and opens the door. So the door on the outside is locked, but if people need to exit, they can push the panic bar and they can exit through those gates at all times.
You and I spoke on the phone. I think we touched on the idea briefly. It was a lot of background noise, so we didn't have an opportunity to go too deep into it. But what do you think of the idea of whenever we put up a new fence, hardwiring that fence with the capability to have some kind of communication with each exit, so we would know if something was ajar? Just speaking from personal experience, at Parkview Elementary School, the gate to the bikes is often ajar, which when dropping off my child, I'll admit, is often very convenient because it enables me to go in and park my bike, take the child out, and go directly to class. But maybe that's not the best. Maybe we should know, or have an apparatus to know if a gate has been left open. We talked about the fact that Wi-Fi technology is available right now for that purpose if we wanted to use it, but we both agreed that it's really not that great because of battery failure or something. Is there any value in maybe putting on future plans the idea of wiring fences for maybe just with low voltage wiring for alarm purposes?
When we spoke this week, I took that conversation to mean the gates at the main entry where we were hoping to put the intercom system and camera system so that the office manager can admit people who have a legitimate reason to come on campus during the school day. Getting power and data to those devices is sometimes very challenging, and if it's a door, even more challenging because a lot of our schools are built in the 1950s, and they're also in concrete block structure, so running wiring through a wall into a door frame and then into the door is very difficult. Wiring every single gate, we'd have to look into maybe an inexpensive technology that may be able to be used for that situation. I hadn't considered that until tonight because I misunderstood what you were talking about. But that would be something that would likely be very difficult to maintain because we have a lot of gates in the district. So we'd have to really discuss that as a goal for achievement.
Thank you.
You bet. So this is an example of the lock blocks that we were using in the classroom. So the first one, in the situation where the classroom door is unlocked and there's a code red and the teacher needs to get her or himself into the classroom and then lock the door, this prevents them needing to do so. So the door is always locked, and the lock block just holds the door open a small portion so that it doesn't latch and lock during normal times. And then during a code red, they can simply slip that lock to the side and shut the door, and it's locked very quickly. Yes.
Julie, does this eliminate the necessity of having to go outside to lock the door that we faced for a number of years?
Yes.
So, okay.
Yes, thank you. And then the other example is simply a guard that is fastened around the door handle, and the instructor can just remove that and shut the door, and then it's locked. So it's much swifter for a quick lockdown when needed. Next slide. At Emma Wilson Elementary School and Parkview Elementary School, we have installed these systems, which is an intercom entry system. So a visitor will walk up to the panel and push the button. The office manager can see the individual on the camera, speak with them, ask them why they are on campus, what they want on campus, do they have legitimate business, and then buzz the lock open on the gate so they can enter. And those, John Sclair in my department just got those installed. I think they've been in about 2 weeks now.
So far, they haven't locked me out.
That's good.
Has there been any feedback as to how they're working?
I've only heard that they're very happy with it. The office managers are happy that they are not going out to greet everyone, and that took a lot of time on their part. And they seem to be very pleased with the security of it thus far. But it hasn't been there very long yet, so we're still, the
And
jury is still out.
And you told me the other day, I think, but what did those cost?
For these two, it was about $15,000 per school.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
Stuff's not
expensive.
cheap. And this is hardwired or wireless?
Yes, it is. This is hardwired.
Was that part of the cost, was labor to wire it?
Actually, at Emma Wilson, we had pre-prepared it, so the pathway to get into the gate and the post on the gate was already there. At Parkview, it was not.
So this is kind of what I'm saying for the future. You know, if we do think we might want to monitor electronically activity, like if it's open or not, a remote gate, you know, I'm not saying we need to run out and wire every school right now, but just as we look to the future and as we build perimeters on new facilities or upgrade, we might want to think about that kind of, you know, those kind of options down the road if we find ourselves wanting to make the schools more secure.
Absolutely a great idea. And we do that in a lot of ways. But hindsight is 20/20 for sure. But implementing that into new construction where we have pathway so that if we want to install equipment, it's there, is a very smart move. It's much cheaper to do it during construction. Thank you.
Eileen?
Julie, thank you. As we move forward this next spring with looking at our facilities master plan upgrades for the sites that we select to touch next, that $15,000 cost, if we're messing with something that's, you know, where we can go ahead and pre-wire, how much would that reduce the cost, or do you know yet? Are we still looking at a $15,000 cost, even if we're not retrofitting?
Well, I think dependent on the feedback we receive from Emma Wilson and Parkview, we may want to implement it sooner rather than later, if at all possible. And as you know, the funding for the facilities master plan is going down. So we may be able to touch 2 more of the elementary schools, but we will have 3 or 4 more
Yeah.
that we want to do, and those we would have to retrofit. in order to get the equipment in there sooner. So we'd have equity between the schools.
Thank you. With the electronic locks, do emergency service personnel have a way to open those electronic gates should the office staff be unavailable for whatever reason?
Yes, so every campus has a lockbox or two located for the fire and police to access the campus when no one's there. And they have a special code to get into those, and they have the keys.
Thank
Yes. You bet.
I've bought a lot of gadgets, like on Amazon, just little intercom things here and there, buttons, sensors, It seems like they always cost like a few bucks nowadays. I looked into like some kind of intercom thing in our house for, communicating, let's just say, with the kids, making racket upstairs after bedtime and stuff like that. And it's like, like $150 or something like that, for like 4 different units, and you can sit down there and, tell them what you want to say. And I just don't see how this thing wound up being $15,000. I mean, for a basic piece of like, what you'd think would be a fairly, straightforward proposition of communicating with somebody on video from 30 feet away. That's a lot of money.
And automatically unlocking and locking
That
the
too.
gate. The gates also, in some cases, would need to be modified, which was the case at both schools.
Mhm.
So that was included in the cost as well.
Opening and closing the gate, and I'm not meaning to like be coming down on you right now. I'm just trying to have some healthy conversation. But that old technology of like, it's in a lot of movies like rom-coms and stuff. You're talking to the outside the door on the street, and somebody like pushes a button on their phone or whatever, and it's like, and it's just like, it buzzes you in. That technology's been around for, gosh, probably 80 years or something like that. Again, I'm kind of balking at the $15,000 price tag. That's all.
I'm not really the qualified person to talk about the technology side of it, but my brief answer would be that we have to have a secure system, and if we have the data run from a lock into the office, it has to get into our network and it has to be networkable, and then it causes a security concern. I don't know.
John's coming to the
Thank you,
rescue.
John. Come rescue me before I
And
talk
she's
about stuff I
correct.
don't know.
So Internet of Things, so devices, it's really important that those devices are enterprise quality so that we know that they are being patched and they are being maintained by the companies that sell them. So when we buy inexpensive items like from Amazon, oftentimes those things never get patched. And so they become a threat. They're on our network and they become a vulnerability. So by having enterprise quality products, we know that those are being patched correctly.
Okay, what do you think about, like the old technology about, buzzing somebody in, sometimes, a low-tech option, it's worth considering those, sometimes they're cheaper, and,
It could, yes, I agree. So like in Seinfeld where they push the button and they let someone in.
Yeah.
Yes, so it sounds like it actually is like just a basic flips the lock kind of idea.
yeah,
How it would tie into other systems though, if we do want to tie it into other things where it sends an alert
Yeah.
that someone's there or something like that, we'd have to look and see what that would look like.
I don't want to bog down in minutia. We've talked
Okay.
enough about it, but I do want to send the signal that, if we ever are able to incorporate cheap, low-tech, options, like where the secretary could just, oh yeah, I know that person, if it could save a few $1,000s, I'd be in favor of it.
Very good.
Thank you. I'm with you, Matt, and if John Sclair were here, he would be chuckling at the conversation because I grilled him the same way. He comes from the IT world, he works in construction department now with me, but I said, hey, can't we do something a lot less, difficult? And he was very convincing that it had to be done this way in order to provide that security for our system. That's the end of my portion. Thank you.
I will adjust this, and I'm glad John Vincent is here because he can answer questions more so than I can. I appreciate that the board understands the scope and breadth of this conversation. right? We're not just talking active shooting, we're not just talking technology, we're not just talking about facilities, we're also talking about the everyday well-being of our students. So John Vincent and his team have created a couple of communication platforms for our students and our staff that we wanted to highlight tonight. So the first one is labeled Securely, and essentially it's a student monitoring system. And if students are on our network using their student ID and their student email, and they include any verbiage in their email communication with anyone, it could be a staff member, it could be another student, anything that would trigger a response to the DIRT team, we immediately are notified of the language that the student uses in the email. Oftentimes, they're researching a project for their health class, but we still get the alerts. Sometimes they're not. They're exchanging thoughts with someone that raises an awareness, and we need to be sure that we connect with the students. So as you can see on the slide, it's monitored 24/7, 365. The DIRT team and the site administration receive notifications from Securely, and we check in on the student. It could be a Sunday morning 2 weeks ago. We had to check in on a couple of kids that were exchanging some information that we needed to be sure they were safe. So in that instance, we call their parents and check in on them, and we want to hear from the student, so we ask them. And if we can't get a hold of somebody or aren't confident that the student is safe, let's say the language was about parents, then we would send a targeted case manager or law enforcement to do a home visit. So that's one platform. The other one is our anonymous reporting Catapult platform. And it is located in all of our web pages. We use it often to receive notifications ranging from, and I'm going to click to another slide, really simple incidents between students to large events, such as the potential for either self-harm or what could result in a code yellow or a code red. So the spectrum that this anonymous reporting platform covers, we think supports even deeper communication rather than having it be a bunch of different mechanisms, like let's say we only use the bully hotline, or we only had incidents reported in some paper mechanism. At any time, a community member, student, staff can contact us through this anonymous reporting mechanism. And it was requested that we provide some data, and I'm not worried about the numbers. You're gonna be disappointed in me, Dr. Kaiser, because I didn't make the numbers really big. But what's really important to us is you notice the large colors. So I want to start with the graph on the left, on your left. As you can see, the majority of our incident types through this communication are suspicious activity, bullying, and then just a request to meet with our counseling team. Like that's almost half of the incidents. So we felt it was really important for people to understand that that button is not just for something that would result in a code yellow or a code red. And then the second graph on the right, you can see that the majority, almost half, of the reports are by staff. So staff are fully engaged in this reporting mechanism. All right, Jim, you want to talk about SROs?
Yes,
Eileen wanted to ask John a question.
question, John.
Sorry, I was giving Phil his key back.
I just had a thought, oh boy. We've got a lot invested right now in our counselors, the additional people, this additional force to try and help our kids that are suffering with social, emotional issues, academic frustrations, home frustrations, and things. Is there a way for us to monitor, say, quarterly, how these wheels are doing? Are the percentages changing? Can we use this to look at progress or regression in what we're dealing with?
I can tell Mr. Marchand's got his button pressed.
No, I can just tell you, yeah, we can get that data. Tim or his person, Kate, can get that data for us. Like last year when I asked how many contacts did we have with our wellness counselors, and it was a little over 34,000 contacts that we had just to our wellness counselors. But yes, we can see trends as they come.
Ah, fantastic. Thank you.
While I've got you up there, can I ask you one more question, Mr. Shepherd?
Sure.
Thank you. Regarding the Securely system, are there specific people who are checking that at all times? Or how does that system?
It's an automatic notification. So as soon as language is included in an email, in the content section or even in the title section of the email, it triggers a notification.
But who's responsible for reviewing that notification and responding to it?
We communicate. The DIRT team, hey, Jim, did you receive the communication this morning about the student? Yeah, I did. I've already contacted the targeted case manager, and she's out in the classroom talking to the student, or pulled the student out of the classroom.
So it goes out to the whole DIRT team?
Goes out to the team, yep.
Okay, I
And
just want to make sure there's no way for things to fall through the cracks on it.
Right, and oftentimes there's multiple responses, and sometimes we stack up on each other, but we'd rather do that.
So I can add too, it also goes to site staff, so the counselors and the assistant principals at the sites, so they see it as well. And something to mention is, with regards to this, is Security 24. So that's a service that security offers where they're watching at their end for a progression of incidents. And so when they see something progressing, like multiple Google searches or something, they'll actually call the police. And so there's, 24/7, there's someone watching who will make a call if there's something serious.
That is both spooky and comforting. Thank you.
It is. Well, and it gets interesting when a teacher assigns an assignment related to suicide or, intervention, and, but we'd rather err on the safe side.
Okay, the next item is on school resource officers. So I've been in the school district about 21 years, most of those years as a high school principal. John has also been Pleasant Valley High School principal. So, and during those years, for the most part, we have had school resource officers. They have been grant funded. We are on a grant funded, we are grant funded now for our school resource officers. It's a tobacco and vaping awareness, but they do many other things on campus. They go into classrooms and talk about the dangers of tobacco, vaping, other controlled substances. But really, in my experience, and I don't want to speak for John, but he can also chime in here. In my experience as a principal, what I saw was the positive relationships that our school resource officers were able to make with our students. I've seen them in rallies. I've seen them, be a guest line judge for alumni volleyball games. Barbecuing this year at open house for parents. So it's an outreach program. I've seen them at farmers market as a school resource officer. So those connections with the community, those connections with our kids in a very positive light allows them to trust the school resource officers. So when when students become aware of threatening issues on campus, they feel comfortable coming to those folks and asking for help. So I've seen it many times. So I think just that is a real positive piece of having resource officers on campus. They also work closely with us in terms of Code Red and Code Yellow. John will talk a little bit about in a minute about how we're notified on Catapult, but the vast majority of the times we go into Code Yellow is because of the police department has put us in that because of dangers in the neighborhood around campuses. So they work very closely with us, alert the DIRT team, put us in those Code Yellow situations. Code Red is actually very rare. It's been a long time since we've been in Code Red. We used to do Code Red drills. It kind of freaks out kids and parents. They immediately go to active shooter. And so in recent years, we do Code Yellow drills, which are very similar to Red. It's just one step below as far as urgency.
In terms of specifics,
Yep.
Madam President, thank you. What are the differences between a Code Yellow drill and a Code Red drill?
So Code Yellow is typically, there's either a disturbance on the campus that's internal, like a fight or something, and they just don't want kids gathering around and watching, Or if in the case of the police putting us in a code yellow, it might be, they might be chasing somebody and that person is heading toward a campus. And they just don't want kids out and about in case that person jumps a fence and comes onto campus, or is even in the area of the neighborhood. A code red means there's actually a threat on the campus. The person has entered the campus and it's unknown whether or not they're armed or dangerous. So in that case, it would go to a code red. And we've had instances, even at PV campus, where somebody has scaled the fence, and it was a while ago, but you know, they jumped a fence and it was right in the middle of campus. But the vast majority are code yellow.
And so for a drill, do kids know that it's a drill? I'm chuckling because I'm
Yeah.
thinking of that scene in Star Wars where the two stormtroopers are saying, maybe it's another drill. Do they know it's a drill?
They do, because we want them to know what to do in the real situation. And so all staff and kids know. Now, sometimes we do what's called a silent code red. The difference there is we want staff to train in order to take roll so they can account for all their kids. In a code yellow, that's a limitation of the software. We can't account for kids and take roll. But our roles for each class is actually entered in the Catapult and in a code red drill, which is a silent one, so the staff knows what's going on, and they'll respond to administration, and they'll do roll. We want them to be able to understand and work with the software fluently, so that in a real emergency, they know exactly what to do. So we'll do silent code reds often. Matter of fact, at this point in the year, every school in the district has completed drills.
A silent code red is where
Kids don't know about it.
Kids don't know
but
about
staff
it.
know about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do unannounced. We also, and we're going to talk more about the drills in a moment. However, we do perform unannounced drills, just so people their other parts of their brain kick in, right? And we want to be prepared for that. Just to add to the school resource officer slide 2, even though we really rely upon them for what's listed here, there is a huge advantage to having a direct connection with any agency such as Chico PD. For example, this morning, the tragic accident triggered our conversations about, we were hearing rumors that it could possibly be a student. And so obviously, if it were a student, we were getting reports from parents that it was a student, and that's gonna, we're gonna have to be prepared for that. So we could immediately contact our connection with Chico PD and ensure that we had accurate information, and in this situation, it was not a student. So having those direct connections with school resource officers is really important.
Yeah, the rumors were already getting out there that it was a student, and we were able to get out in front of it early. We already had received a few phone calls, I think at the school site. Is that right, Jane? At the school site, and they were wondering if a child had been hit, and we were able to get out in front of that real early, and that's just another plus.
The other thing I want to remind people, when we first had the current school resources officers coming on, the very first day at Fairview, they interrupted a drug situation and probably saved 3 kids' lives by sending them to the hospital immediately. They were on it
Right.
instantly.
Is there an opportunity possibly to get more of that funding? I mean, I assume if there was, we would have exploited it, but what's the availability of the funding behind those?
So when they reinstituted, because of the increase in tobacco taxes, they reinstituted the grant funding for SROs on campus. Chico Unified was in the first group, and we had, I believe, 5 SROs at that time. The funding grant changed a bit, where the city had to apply for it rather than the district, and we were able to get funding for 4. That's what we currently have. But at the same time, there was competition. All the other big cities piled in: Oakland, San Francisco, LA. I mean, they just piled in, and so the dollars went, to many more places, and it was much more competitive. So something we always work with the city to try to do, but that's always an unknown from 5-year plan to 5-year plan.
And I just want to make sure, my understanding is that right now the city actually manages that grant, right? It's
That's
not
correct.
In-house, okay.
Yep, that's correct. We did before, but it went over all to the cities across the state. So
we were denied the grant before the city, so then that's when we had our grant writer, Kristen Lauer, work with the city to apply through the city so we could continue. Because after we got denied the one time, we wanted to see if we can go through another avenue with the city doing it, and so that's why we switched it that way.
And I want to shout out to John Carver as a Chico PD VIP. He also provides us with some insight, and we appreciate that connection as well. Again, talking about the whole student and the whole learning environment, we'd be remiss if we didn't address bullying and harassment. And that's a decades-long challenge for every school district and every society. We did want to highlight this very specific ed codes. We are often asked, what are the laws about bullying? And so we wanted to provide those to the public if they access the presentation tonight. What we also wanted to highlight was 48902A, that these ed codes do include bullying via a digital platform. And that is a suspendable offense. And we want the public to understand that there is ed code to support any challenges that come across our desks when we're trying to deal with bullying and harassment. Now, there's the discipline side of bullying and harassment, and there's also the everyday or the ongoing check-ins with students. So we wanted to highlight a platform that Tim Karras and Christy Bankson have been, and John Vincent and his team, have been developing for our students. And it's called a Kelvin Platform. And essentially, surveys go out to students on their district-provided device, and they go out at varying frequencies throughout the school year. And it's interesting, an icon will pop up on the device, essentially telling the student, the survey's available, you need to take it right now. And so the student clicks on the icon, some questions come up. They vary from grade level. Obviously, we're going to ask things in different ways to different grade levels, and students have an opportunity to respond. So I'm not going to read the whole slide to you, but you can see that the main focus here is social emotional wellness, to just check in with kids and provide them a really safe opportunity to engage in these conversations. And I want to move to the next slide. We think it's really important, if you look at that second bullet, that if we receive information through that survey that the student needs to work some things out or has some questions about something, the student receives an automatic notification. There's a threshold built into the system that provides this pop-up and asks the student if the student would like to talk to an adult. I will say that when we were piloting this, we had a bunch of 3rd and 4th graders who were like, yeah, I'd love to talk to an adult. What's going on today? Let's talk about the Dodgers, right? So we had to try to figure out those thresholds a little better. What we're finding is the students really appreciate not having to stand up, ask to go to the office, and expose their vulnerability. They can report right through this mechanism to us. So we're still developing questions, trying to fine-tune it. I think we're about 2 years into this implementation. So it's been really rewarding.
Yeah, I spoke about the drills already, so I'll just briefly talk about this, but code yellow drills are very common. We've had those happen across the district already. They'll continue. As John said, we'll have unannounced drills next. There was a period of time, especially during COVID, where we didn't do a lot of this. There was other things happening. We didn't want to take more instructional time away. We were in school half a day, so it was very difficult to practice these things. So we've been emphasizing it extremely high level lately in the last year or so. So we have a lot of new staff. We have a lot of kids that may not be as familiar with what they need to do in an emergency. So all that training needs to happen. As I explained, the differences between code yellow and code red. We continue to do fire drills. In this day and age, fire drills have changed for 50 years, forever and ever. When we were kids, you get up, you walk outside, you line up, and you do your fire drill. not so much anymore. Now, if you see fire or you smell smoke, then you go out. Otherwise, you wait for instructions from administration. So fire drills have changed, so we've had to adapt. So, but we have to reteach kids and staff on all these things, so.
Is that for security purposes, like in case it's not actually a fire, but somebody just
Exactly.
pulled a lever?
Since Parkland, somebody pulled the fire alarm and then started firing away, so that changed it across the country. So, and we had to get approval from the fire department to do that, because before that, it was a requirement. So, of course, you know, there was flexibility built in there, and we got approval and across the state, across the nation. So we just have to keep adapting. Catapult. Sure. Catapult.
Very similar to that anonymous reporting button we were talking about before. The Catapult system's priority mechanism for us to communicate with all the different agencies, the different staff that would need to be involved in a situation. Things, again, can range from incidents of bullying all the way up to any type of code red or code yellow. As you can see on the slide, that the main purpose is to share information and to communicate with agencies all around. I do want to, we didn't put this on the slide because we didn't know if things are going to change, as they always do. The legislation that was implemented in 2018 has also provided some additional support for our students and staff. Prior to 2018, Code Red's protocol was simply hide. Just hide. Don't run, don't fight, just hide. Do everything you can to hide. And what we were finding is that's exactly what, you know, a perpetrator would want you to do, is to simply just hide and not run or fight. So in 2018, legislation changed and allows us now to support, when we drill, to run, fight, hide. So any of those three, and not any specific order, are available to students. It does present some challenges when we have students flee. We would have some challenges if students were to flee during an active shooter event, but we would rather face those challenges than have them sit in rooms and simply hide. Yeah.
How are students appraised of this directive?
Through the admin, through the staff, through the trainings, through the drills. So they know the three options. Yeah.
So if I quizzed a bunch of high school sophomores, they would know that they were welcome and encouraged to fight if they saw something bad?
Well, not to sound facetious, if you quiz them on anything, I don't know if you're going to get 100% results, but the staff have been trained to deliver that information to the students.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add on Catapult. Of course, the police have Catapult, so they can put us in a code yellow or code red as necessary. The Catapult application is on their computers at their desk, but it's also available on cell phones. So if you're on a field trip, or you're coming onto campus, or you're not in your classroom near your computer, you would be notified wherever you are. While we can't require staff to put that application on their personal phones, well over 99% of the staff is elected to do so. So it's almost universal, and we highly encourage it. It's obviously safer for each individual to be notified anywhere they are. So that has been very successful in working with staff to get that put on there.
So just some additional safety issues we know are on people's minds, and this is by no means an exhaustive list of everything that we need to worry about. As we mentioned before, cyberbullying, specifically in social media, has become much more prevalent. And what some people don't understand is the way the Ed Code is written, that when a student steps off that student's campus, or excuse me, off that student's property to come to school, they are within the jurisdiction of Chico Unified. And they are within our jurisdiction until they step back on their property at the end of the school day. So it's important for people to understand that. The scope and jurisdiction is much wider than just from the moment the first bell rings to the moment the last bell rings. And why that's important is some students who may be bullying via social media, if that bullying has an effect on the school day in any way, then it can be addressed within our jurisdiction. Did you have something to say? You got that? Okay. Additionally, we all know that there are active gangs in Butte County. Some people feel like they move up to Butte County to try to alleviate those challenges. However, we recognize that there are active gangs. What we do also understand, though, what we've been seeing is there's peaks and valleys to gang activity. And one of the benefits of having direct connections with law enforcement is they're able to make us aware of activities within our area. For example, Dr. Kaiser talked about the drug situation. If the word on the street that there's going to be a confrontation, maybe something happened at Saturday, market, our SROs can be sure to fill us in. Let's see.
On the gang question, I had a conversation with an SRO a couple of weeks ago who told me that there was a problem in terms of their hands kind of being tied. If they have a problem with somebody that's gang related, they're basically can't ask the student any questions at all. Do you know anything about this? Like that the student can have a lawyer with them, and from the standpoint of investigating it, as a discipline issue, their hands are very tied.
If there's an emergent or urgent threat to self or others, then Chico or law enforcement can become immediately involved. However, without those in place or the jeopardy of those, school administration needs to initiate and participate in investigations. So that's kind of the rule of thumb right now. However, if minus the student, the law enforcement officer and school officials can communicate. So there's still a way to provide more support for that learning environment.
So an administrator, for example, could ask questions of the student.
Oh, yeah.
In a way that a school resource officer could not.
Yes.
And share that information.
Yeah. And then just to add some more legalese, we all know that law enforcement is bound by probable cause. And our administration is able to act upon reasonable suspicion. So they have a lesser threshold to take action, let's say a backpack search.
Okay, I just want to briefly touch on student assault of staff. That is generally in our district happens with our most severely handicapped students. We have had a number of those cases this year. What we are doing is trying to get as much support in those classrooms as we can, increasing the number of instructional aides in those targeted classrooms. We have been actively working to hire and train behavioral specialists so we can reduce those behaviors as much as possible and support those teachers in those school sites. So that's generally where our if we have an assault, they're throwing something, they're kicking, they're biting in some situations, and these are students that it is because of their disability. I'm not saying it doesn't happen in any of the others, but that's pretty rare. It's typically in areas where we need to provide more supports so those behaviors don't happen. And we work closely with special ed to do that. Yes.
I know that we've recently hired a number of specialists in behavior, is it modification, identification? I can't remember the title of the
Right.
position, but I know we got some new ones. How many was it that we got?
I'm going to have Ms. Olson address that question.
There are two types of different positions that we've been adding over the past year. One of them is a behaviorist, a specialist. And so these are people that we're hiring that are going to become board-certified behavior analysts. And they train, supervise, give recommendations, write behavior intervention plans, do functional behavior assessments. And so they will work directly with school teams. And those will be district employees. One of them's already started. in that line, I also have 4 contracts for BCBAs from the outside because it's been so hard to get BCBAs over the
Yeah.
line. And they have different areas that they're focused, I'm sorry, board certified behavior analyst. And they are working with specific things. We have one that's working specifically with these students that have higher behaviors due to communication and other behavior needs. We have one that's working directly with our access programs and providing more intensive behavior supports and modeling and training there, and they do a lot of training. And then I have one that's specifically doing training. The other positions are called Instructional Paraprofessional, Intensive Behavior Interventionist. We've hired 12 of those so far, and they are in our access classrooms, which are our emotional disturbed classes. And then they are also in some of our classes that have higher behaviors due to students with behavioral attached to autism and or communication. So there are kids K through 12 that might not have any communication due to their autism. So they're in those classes. In addition, we just had approved an additional 10 of those types of positions in order to address coming out of COVID, kids adjusting back to classes, and the higher behaviors because they haven't been around the presses that school makes for students, academic presses, being around lots of noise, being around lots of kids and adults. And so we're going to be using those. In addition, one of those 10 is actually going to be a general ed focused person in that to help with the opportunity class that they
With the
have on
what
the general
class?
ed side.
The opportunity class.
Oh, opportunity, okay.
Yeah, the opportunity class. Okay.
Do we
So-
ever, this may seem strange, but do we ever encourage our staff that are particularly exposed to these kinds of physical risk to martial arts where it's avoidance?
So all of the staff in these classrooms are CPI trained, and so those CPI trains go on throughout. That's I'm not even going to remember what it stands for, and there's no one here to help me. John? But it is that the de-escalation is the first of it, de-escalation training, and the second one is holds. And so our staff is trained. Schools are prevented from doing holds though, and so it's really in only emergency cases, and it has to be written into an IEP if we might do holds with that student. So not only the teachers trained in those areas that we've identified, staff, the aides are trained, principals can be trained, and so everyone that might come into a need, we don't typically train yard duties and stuff just because the level of ongoing support that's needed for that, and we want that decision to be made with this specialized knowledge and with recognizing the difference between typical special ed behavior versus typical general ed behavior and how you would differentiate. So it is pretty specialized.
Okay.
Okay.
CPI stands for Crisis Prevention Institute and Intervention. Thanks.
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand.
Crisis Prevention Intervention?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so real quick, we do restrict our freshmen to campus when they come from junior high. It was kind of the wild, wild west when they got freedom. So what we found out is that when we restrict our freshmen to campus and give them that year to grow and mature, they do much better when they go downtown. So it reduces, we're trying to avoid some of those issues that happen and they bring back to campus. So bad things happen sometimes with a lot of our freshmen students who are not making good decisions. And so when they're just a year older, it's remarkable how they make many more good decisions. So that's been very successful. John's going to talk briefly about controlled substances.
Great, thank you. So going back to the school resource officer connection, the primary focus of the grant was on vaping and tobacco products. So having them be involved in supporting us as we are providing professional development to our staff has been really helpful. We all know that fentanyl is a crisis right now, and it used to be, frankly, a crisis for secondary students. It wasn't as much of a crisis for elementary students, but now that fentanyl is being provided in candy-like bits of, that basically look like something the students are going to receive on Halloween, we've had to up our game in that arena. Specifically ensuring that we have Narcan available on our secondary sites, that we have staff trained to administer it, and Ted Sullivan is working with the nurses to work with elementary to ensure that they're trained as well. We're not quite there yet. You're going to see in the next slide, there's still much to do. However, we realize we definitely need to be better prepared K-12, TK-12. So we wanted to highlight some, again, the future, essentially. And I specifically wanted to come back to a conversation that was held quickly in the last board meeting about how we're holding students accountable in the digital world. And we've been having conversations about how do we ensure that all students understand the rules. And there's just a blanket curriculum, so when they open up their Chromebook, they understand what's expected of them. I know all of you have clicked into various platforms and had to accept the terms and conditions of that platform. And John Vincent and his team are going to deepen that philosophy and start creating some modules that students would have to complete before they could use the district-provided technology. So that's evolving. We're excited about that. In the past, we have been fortunate enough to have some either retired or active various agencies join us to provide any trainings that we feel would be relevant for our students. So for example, we all can agree that social media right now could be one of the largest challenges facing our students outside academia. So we're having conversations with law enforcement about student body presentations and also to the parents. Because I don't know about you, but I have to check in with my daughter every once in a while to be sure I can access what I need to. And then Jim's going to talk about the last one.
Okay, lastly, we are on November 10th going to be working with Chico Police Department and the Central California Intelligence Center on vulnerability assessments of each of our campuses. So actually at PV High School, they're going to be coming to PV High School. We'll have our DIRT team there. We'll have members from other departments, but we'll also have at least one administrator from each school site at that training. It's an all-day, 8-hour training. We'll work on the Pleasant Valley campus as a model to determine what are the vulnerable parts of the campus and what do we need to do to correct it. Our intent is then for those principals to then go back to their school sites and do the same thing on their school sites and determine how safe are they, what improvements do they need to make, and how can we support them through facilities or M&O or ed services, however that needs to happen. So we're looking forward to that. We'll have our school resource officers there also, and so again, it's a big team on determining those vulnerabilities across the district.
An example of that, not just the large function that's going to take place on November 10th, I just want to go back to the school resource officer collaboration. We had school resource officers this morning out on the grounds of one of our schools as it was performing a drill and able to be a part of the debrief. When the principal was finished, they were able to sit down and talk about some challenges that were presented that the SROs they viewed just in a 15-minute drill situation. So it's ongoing as well as this other event.
And that is it. Questions? Ms. Robinson.
We've had the current grant, the tobacco grant, what, 3 years? Are we 3 years in? 4?
It got renewed
Plus,
recently, so this, I think
how
this
stable-
is our
my
second year.
question-
Our second year of the current
It's the
grant.
second grant, and we're in the second year of the second grant.
Okay. The question is, how stable are, well, not emotionally, but do our SROs stay once they've been assigned? You know, in talking with 2 of them, they were so positive about their roles and didn't want to go back to being a beat cop, that I suspected they were probably wanting to stay as long as they could. Is that still the case, or do we have a turnover problem?
Yeah, what we found is they often get promoted. So this is a desirable assignment, along with detectives and those types of things. So often it's competitive to be part of the school resource officer program. Carlos over at Fairview has been there for many, many years. But some of them aspire for higher positions, and we lose them. We tend to lose them that way. They take on promotions. So, but yes, many of them, like you said, they like doing that job. They like being in schools, and so we hang on to them as long as we can. But we also understand that they have careers and they have opportunities that pop up occasionally.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Lando.
Thank you. So I apologize for not having asked this before the meeting to give you guys time to prepare. I don't mean to gotcha. I'm just curious, do you know, as a trend overall, are we seeing more or less bullying or crime over the last couple of years, say? Do we?
My gut, and I'm just going by gut.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Tim Karras crime is a really broad broad category. Specifically, though, I would say social media bullying has definitely increased, hence the Kelvin rollout.
I can also tell you, just because we have so many more opportunities, including what we've showed tonight, where kids can report it anonymously, that we do have more numbers that come in that had previous,
more
before we've
reporting
had,
before.
the anonymous hotline on all of our websites for our schools. So we see an uptick, but I believe it's because our students have more of a way of getting our administration and our counselors to know that they need support in that area.
I hear that.
Yeah, what we are able to track is the ed code violations that result in a suspension or expulsion. So we do have that data. We saw suspension rate rise a little bit last year from the prior year. And that, like I said, is tied to ed code.
Yeah, thank you.
Dr. Kaiser, we have Caitlin Dalby has her hand up.
All right. Caitlin?
Hi, thanks. I just wanted to ask for a little bit more detail on our campus supervisor program. Basically, just how are we with capacity right now? Do we have open positions for supervisors? And do we have like a rule for ratios on how many supervisors we have per students or at school sites? Just a little bit more detail about that program.
So we have one position that's open, but generally our campus supervisor positions are fully staffed. We have added hours through COVID dollars. That is an allowable expense. I would have to tell you, come back to you with how many hours we have added for supervision. We fully expected behavioral issues when kids came back from not being in school for a period of time, and that has obviously proved the case. But I'd have to come back to you, Ms. Dalby, with the exact numbers and where we are as far as that goes. We do have different amounts of time depending on the size of the school. Obviously, the high schools have more time. We've allotted additional time to Fairview. Because it's an alternative site, fewer hours for the smaller junior highs, and then we have what's called yard duty supervision at the elementaries. I don't know if that fully answers your question, but I can certainly get more information for you if you need.
Yeah, that answered my original question. I guess just a quick follow-up question is if there is a general sense if any of our site administrators are asking for an increase in campus supervisor positions or SROs, or if everybody seems to be pretty even keel with what is being provided at this time.
We've had conversations, particularly with Fairview. They have upticks and kind of a cyclical behavioral issues over there. We constantly are in contact. Matter of fact, we've had that conversation today about whether or not they need additional help. So we want to be mindful of that. And as far as the SROs, that's pretty much locked in on the grant, and we don't have a lot of control over that.
Eileen has a question.
Yes, just anecdotally, at the Saturday Farmers Market, I was in conversation with a professor from Chico State, math science advanced, and he had just retired. And he said that in the last year, the behaviors of his college-age kids had just gotten so different, negative, that he was glad he was at the point where he could retire in good conscience. I was surprised that even with that age level, the teacher who had been at Chico State for a long time said, you know, he notices it.
The young people of today.
All right, any other questions? Tom? No? Okay. I do want to really thank all of you who have been involved with this. It's obviously a very complicated issue with many, many different facets. So the fact that our administrative team is working together so well that they can ask for help in public is a good sign. So thank you.
And on that note, the fact that we saw every single department, Ed Services, facilities, everybody's been involved in the safety and security issue is really a great sign. Thank you.
Eileen, did you want to?
Yes, just looking forward. We're headed into a rather frantic reexamination of our facilities master plan. And just to, please be involved at every level that you can. If we don't have you busy doing something else, be paying attention, because this is the issue that is at the basis of practically everything we do when we look at what to do to have our facilities be what generates a positive educational experience. And you can't have one without the other.
So I have a notation that there is a speaker for this. I don't have the name listed.
Scott Shealy.
I believe it's, Mr. Scott Shealy.
Okay. Is Scott Seeley here?
Okay. He just wanted us to make sure that we read, everybody got a hold of his email that he sent for his comment.
I did not get that email.
It's my understanding from Ms. Smith behind me, it's in the board agenda packet. A comment
Mr. Marchand,
added
did you
today.
say that we had an email from the gentleman about tonight's meeting?
It's not in an email, but it's in the, where a public comment was put in.
I'll have to go back and look again, because
It came in, I believe it came in this morning. Yes, it came in this morning,
okay.
and we'll make sure that
Yeah.
you guys get it if you don't.
I'll go back and take a look, sir, because I didn't remember seeing it yesterday, so I'll
Yeah,
look.
it was this
I'll
morning.
I
look
got
and
it.
see it tomorrow.
Yeah, I got it.
Agenda now.
Okay,
I don't know.
so, thank you.
I have some comments. And this may be something we want to talk about in items for a future agenda. But I think that with, as you alluded to, Ms. Robinson, we have a comprehensive facilities master plan getting reapproved soon. We need to see if any fresh ideas have come up, I think, in the last 8 years. Or I think we need to go back to the public, back to board members. I myself have some ideas, as I appraised you of this morning. And I would like an opportunity to refresh, our safety protocols for planning purposes in the facilities master plan. I myself have a couple of ideas that I'd like an opportunity to, I think as we build new schools, as we upgrade schools, there are some things that we should have in place to ensure that we have options down the road for adding greater security. I mentioned earlier the possibility of hardwiring fencing and remote gates as they're built. In my written communication to you all this morning, made reference to a concept that I have for a double gate system at our single entry point so that staff could strictly control who comes into our school campuses if they want to. I think some of these things need to be on the radar screen for approval by the board so that we can inform Julie and her planning staff about any improvements that we want to make to that plan. So
I think
this-
that would qualify as number 6, the request to agendize an
Okay,
item. So
well, I'll plan to bring that up then. Thank you.
And I can just provide clarity here as well, Mr. Tennis. I love all your ideas, and this is a great brainstorming session. So as we go through the updating the facility master plan, there will be community meetings. So members of the public can certainly bring forth ideas as well. The board will be included in those meetings, as well as school site staff meetings as well. So there'll be ample opportunity to provide those ideas to bring forward so that we can start possibly incorporating those into future facilities.
Great, and thank you for that. So is security one of the things that's flagged for public, traditionally? Like, hey, if you have any thoughts on security as we talk about building new future schools, that's
It's
on
certainly an
there.
element of it. Julie, did you want to elaborate on that?
Yes, security is one of the items that is focused on at each campus during the development of the master plan. Yes, certainly.
Thank you.
Sure.
all right, so with that was informational. We move to item 5, which is discussion action, and that is under business services, charter school measure K projects request.
Thank you. So in November of 2016, the voters approved $152 million for Measure K, and a portion of that, 15.34% of those dollars, were allocated for projects for charter schools within our area. And the Measure K, the board developed a Measure K charter school facility committee to review and approve funding projects for the charter schools that are then brought to this board. So tonight, I have several projects that I'm bringing forward from their recent meeting. Out at Core Butte, they're requesting planning funds for a new sports field. So they're going to be working with an engineering firm locally here in town for planning and organizing. So they're asking for planning money at this point of $54,000. Forest Ranch Charter School. Over the summer, I brought forward a request for funding for them to repair their blacktop, and that project went over budget by $1,930 so they're asking for those additional funds to pay for that. And they also lost their freezer in their food service department, and they need to replace their freezer, they're asking for $5,632.18 to purchase a freezer. And then Sherwood Montessori Charter is asking for $12,000 for a combination of items, desks for staff, some horseshoe tables for classrooms, some play equipment, and fencing and gates and locks for their property that they own. It's privately owned by them across the street from Chapman Elementary School. So tonight I'm bringing forward those projects for your hopeful approval. Thank you.
And to provide clarity, there are 5 items on the posted agenda. The very first item, Blue Oak, the land acquisition planning money, that is being pulled by Chico Unified per Blue Oak's request this evening.
All right, any questions from the board? Yes?
Do you guys, staff, feel these are reasonable dollar amounts?
Yes, we do. And just so you know how it works, for instance, Sherwood Montessori School, they've shopped for these items and they've provided estimates. Our purchasing department actually does the purchasing at Chico Unified, and we often get discounts, for because we're just larger purchaser. So they usually end up saving a little bit of money in the end.
Not in the case of the parking lot, though, apparently.
Yes, I'm glad you said that. You know, they're kind of far away from Chico, so they were having a difficult time getting any companies to come up and give them a quote. And the company that ended up doing the work did a good job, but we think they were not very good at estimating.
Construction is rough right now. I mean, these companies are super much in demand because of the Paradise rebuild and stuff like that, so, yeah. Well, I'll move approval of these items.
I'll second it. When I saw this agenda for the Forest Ranch freezer, the logging freezer, I thought, oh my God, bears? Never mind.
All right, so we have a motion by Mr. Tennis and a second by Eileen. Any questions?
Yes, actually for staff. Do we need in the wording of the motion to specify that we are not including the Blue Oak?
Yes, that would be preferable to make it very clear to our constituents.
All right, good. Thank you for that. Good
So,
question.
in-
So,
Thank
I'll accept that friendly
Friendly
amendment.
yes. So the Blue Oak request has been eliminated based on their request of us. And so the 4 projects are Core Butte, Forest Ranch has 2, and Sherwood has 1. Any other questions? Any questions or discussion issues from the audience? All right, seeing none, can I have a voice vote, please? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, passes 4-0. Thank you. And let's see, so next is actually the possibility of a board member wanting to bring something to agendize an item.
So I have something. I think that as we move forward with our comprehensive facilities master plan reapproval, that we should open up specifically the security. As I articulated in my email to you, I'm thinking we want to have options down the road for, I mean, what I could only describe as a high security environment at school. I'm not saying that we want to build everything high security, reverse prison level right now, but I think that, you know, if we look way into the future, 20 years, 50 years, 100 years, we'd like these facilities to last a long time. I think that we need to have that in view as an option. And so there's just some things that I've put in writing. I don't need to articulate them all right now. I'll wait for the process where you guys agree with me and we, you know, agree to kind of open this up for more public input and for refining our protocols for planning purposes. Do any of you have any questions of clarification for me on this? Yes.
Not questions or clarifications. I absolutely understand it, you know, what your concern is. This would just be some input from having spent a number of years going through the facilities master plan development process and how that process does not operate in a void. The things that we've said tonight, everybody has heard. They're going to be on the minds of not only our staff, but parents who have the same concern, other community members. It doesn't need to have a specifically worded board, sorry about that, agenda. You know, I think that as an agenda item, we'd be here trying to discuss stuff we don't need to be discussing yet because we don't have the proposals in front of us yet because the facilities master plan hasn't come back to us for final approval. The process that's gone through is so in-depth and is always focused on safety. Students, when Kathy and I met with the people when we were doing the McManus approvals and things, that was one of the major things that we were talking about. It's always there. And so I think you can relax and know that your concerns are everybody's concerns, and they will be on the table without a specific board action taking place.
Having done facilities at the state level as well as with the district, the project of creating the facilities master plan brings in experts. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Phil. The project of creating a master plan brings in experts who, they're looking at demographics, they're looking at the community. We're looking at street safety, and which is tragically brought up today. And the school hires, they're looking at it as experts. The city is looking at experts, and they hire outside experts. We always are bringing in outside experts. I've never seen a facilities plan that didn't consider safety very seriously. The other part of it is we are trapped in a time warp. We got $152 million because the community trusted us and passed the bond, and we have spent it on Measure K. We have spent it, I think, very well. We can't go the next steps without going out for another bond, and that takes a lot of planning and approaching the community and getting community input. So they will have, again, another chance to articulate their concerns.
They is who? Who is they?
Everyone. Because a bond, every voter has input on a bond. And when we go out and see what it is that the community is concerned about, they tell us. The charter schools tell us. We do get very significant feedback, and we bring in our school site admin at the schools that we are looking at next. Julie, do you remember how many schools off the top of your head that are on our next cycle?
There are 4 elementary schools. in the
4
next-
elementary?
Yes.
Okay. And that means every parent that's there at one of those schools is going to want to articulate their concerns. So I don't want to wave a red flag at the bull and scare people. I want to get really thoughtful input. And I think you've already created some ideas that you've structured. Those, can come to the committee for sure. Because the facilities committee is looking at every aspect and working together with the experts that we hire about what it is that we can do and what it is that's needed. They don't always match up. We don't always have all the money to do all the things that we would like to do. But I think if you go to any of our schools that we've been able to modernize, you really see the impact of that investment. Just go look at PV's Career Technical. They have facilities that rival any restaurant in Chico. And that's because people that were concerned with that those students would get absolutely high-quality investment in order to get ready for a career. Their sports medicine just had visitation on that. So it is not that we can do everything right away, but it is critical that we consider the options, just like you said, of what the future might bring us.
Well, if I heard just that last thing you said, it sounds like you would agree with me that we should vote right now, or at least make a concrete plan that we are going to incorporate, board member and public feedback into our questions of how we're going to plan for the security aspects of our comprehensive
We
facilities.
always do. We always do.
But you are not willing to state, in a context of a vote, that we're going to hear ideas from the public for safety of our
Hey,
campuses in the
folks.
future?
It's hard that I'm not there, but this is really a point of order because this isn't a vote to actually take the action that you are discussing, but to agendize it for a future item. And it should be something that a motion gets put on the table to actually put it as an action item on a future agenda.
Yeah, I feel like I'm getting pushback, even at the idea of even having the conversation, So I'll go ahead and for the sake of parliamentary procedure, I'll make that motion that we consider a series of safety protocols for future construction as we work up the comprehensive facilities master plan, which is being reapproved. Based on preliminary comments I've heard, I'm not feeling like I'm going to have much support for that. And I think that it's something that we should discuss. The fact that you won't discuss it is sort of like, assuming that that's where this is going, you feel like we've already got experts who know what ought to happen for the safety of our future schools. And so therefore, we don't need to hear from people like me or people like the public.
Jay,
Kelly Staley has her hand up.
I'm sorry, what?
Kelly Staley has her hand up.
Oh, okay. Kelly?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify that we do have March 1st set for our facility master plan, and we can definitely make sure that safety is a component of that. And as we work with school sites, they do go out to school sites, as already mentioned, and get that feedback. But by all means, I mean, there were some excellent suggestions that were made, and we can certainly pull those into the board meeting conversations and other conversations that we have about safety.
Thank you, Kelly. That's good enough for me. And I'll withdraw my motion based on that.
Okay. I just got the motion that Kelly had her hand up. Okay. So we're lagging a little bit. Okay, so the facilities master plan is scheduled for March. And certainly full participation, by comments and ideas. Yes, Julie.
I just want to add that I'm going to be coming back to the board with a proposal from Lionakis for the work effort for updating the master plan. And I can ensure that this language is included in their scope of work. And then when you approve the expenditure, you will be approving the work to occur, if that helps.
Which language are you thinking of incorporating into it?
A safety and security, evaluating the safety and security of each school site.
Okay.
And recommended incorporation of work into the master plan.
I mean, I think it's really important. We are going to do it. So I appreciate, Matt, that you wanted to make sure, but I can also assure you that they will bring it to us. We will expect it from them, and the community input is definitely there.
All right. I'm not quite satisfied. I think there ought to be some kind of a checklist for new construction. I think of things like possibly hardwiring any new fencing where there's an exit. I think of things like, you know, building our floor plans in such a way that you could put a double gate system in if you wanted to down the road. And so I move that we, along with that agenda item in, did she say it was in March, that we consider a possible checklist to add on to the many things that are already looked at in the course of new development that would specifically program in very forward-looking considerations, which would save cost in the long run, because if we decided that we wanted that added security, and if you didn't make any plan for a higher level down the road, you might have to do retrofitting, which could be very expensive. So all I'm asking you for is to add the concept of a checklist to that agenda item.
Julie, feedback? Don't we have a checklist when we meet with our,
So part of the master plan development that we had done previously is a safety and security report. This report outlines the public input that was received from each school site and the community at large. And then it defines the work that we're going to do moving forward, which is what we're working off of this document now. But it will be updated as part of the update of the master plan, and there will be a great deal of opportunity for input regarding the checklist, the list of things to be done as a result of the report that then get incorporated into the designs as we move forward. So I think we're all talking about the same thing. And I think that what I was saying earlier is when I bring forward the proposal from the architect, that's going to be very shortly. That's not all the way in March. March is when it's done. The work is going to occur from now until then, and I will make sure that it's specifically noted in the scope of work that you approve that we're going to update this report and define those priorities to be incorporated in all our projects in the future.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Thank you.
thank you, Julie. I'm also quite sure the state will be updating their expectations as well. Okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, you're
I'm willing to withdraw that motion too.
okay,
Yep.
thank you. All right, so with this, because we have a board member who can't be here in person, we have no closed session items. And so this would conclude the board workshop, unless somebody wants to make a comment. Okay, seeing none. All right, so it's closed. Thank you so much.